It's been 2 years since I worked full-time, and most people didn't even notice. My name is Rachel Carter. I was the housekeeper for the Montgomery family, a wealthy couple living in a beautiful modern home outside of Los Angeles. Their house looked like it belonged in a magazine. I worked in the background, cleaning, organizing, and making sure everything ran smoothly in a home that didn't quite feel like mine. Smooth glass walls, shiny wood floors, well-kept grounds, and a pool that looked like a mirror reflecting the sky. Mr. Richard Montgomery was a powerful real estate developer who was always on the phone or in meetings. He rarely looked up from his laptop unless it was to give instructions. He wasn't rude, he was just uninterested. Mrs. Leah Montgomery was sophisticated and graceful, with a kind of cold elegance. She travelled a lot, supposedly for charity events, fashion shows, or wellness retreats, as she called them. I rarely said more than a few words to her. Their son Tyler Montgomery was the only one who ever tried to pay attention to me. Tyler was 24 years old and had just moved back home after finishing college in the East. He had the easy charm of someone who didn't have to worry about paying bills or making plans for the future, but he often felt out of place in his own home. He spent most of his time reading books that didn't go with how he looked. Whenever we saw each other, he always smiled and started a conversation that turned into something longer. Unlike his parents, he didn't look right through me like I wasn't there. One afternoon, I was cleaning the kitchen counters when Tyler walked in barefoot with a half-full glass of lemonade. He looked at me and asked, "Do you ever feel like you were meant for something else?" I didn't know what to say, so I paused. He leaned against the table and said, "Like you've spent your whole life walking through someone else's story?" That question stuck with me. I didn't know why he was talking to me that way. Maybe he was bored, maybe he needed someone who wouldn't judge him, or maybe all he wanted was to feel safe being heard. I didn't give him a real answer that day. I just smiled politely and continued cleaning. Over the next few weeks, our casual exchanges turned into real conversations. He'd find excuses to come into the rooms I was working in. He'd ask me what music I liked, what movies I watched where I grew up. I wasn't used to being seen like that, and I didn't want to believe it meant anything. But part of me started looking forward to seeing him each day. One evening, the Montgomerys left town for a gala in San Francisco. They had asked me to stay late and prepare the guest suite because some visitors were supposed to arrive the next morning. The house was quiet except for the soft hum of the dishwasher in the background. I was folding towels in the linen closet when I heard footsteps behind me. It was Tyler. He leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, watching me with a kind of gentle amusement. "You work too hard," he said softly. I laughed a little and shook my head. "Well, someone has to." He stepped closer. "You ever think about doing something else?" I looked up at him. "Of course, but life doesn't always give you a choice." He nodded. Looking serious for a moment, "I think you're stronger than you know." There was a moment of silence that lingered too long to be casual. I felt his eyes on me and my heart beat a little faster. I looked away, willing myself not to read too much into it later that night. I finished up the guest room and made my way toward the kitchen to grab my things. Tyler was there sitting at the counter with a bottle of wine. He poured 2 glasses and pushed one toward me. "Just one," he said with a smile, "to thank you for all you do around here." I hesitated. I shouldn't have, but something about the way he said it made me stay. I sat down and took the glass. We talked for a while about life dreams, regrets, and the weight of expectations. He told me how he felt like he didn't belong in the world his parents built. I told him how I felt like I was always standing on the outside, looking in. We were 2 people from opposite sides of the glass, both feeling trapped in different ways. One thing led to another, an accidental brush of hands, a laugh that turned into a moment of silence. We looked at each other and the space between us seemed to disappear, but what happened next wasn't reckless. It wasn't fast, it was honest. 2 people simply connecting. In a world that rarely allowed them to, I didn't go home that night. I stayed, not because I planned to, not because I thought it would change anything, but because for the first time in years, I felt like I mattered. The morning sunlight poured into the kitchen as I woke up on the couch, startled and unsure of where I was. For a second, my clothes were rumpled and my heart was racing. I looked around, but Tyler was nowhere in sight. I stood up and tried to collect myself, already preparing to sneak out quietly before anyone noticed. But as I walked toward the front door, I froze. Mrs. Montgomery was standing there. She had returned early and was watching me with a kind of look I couldn't read. My heart dropped into my stomach. I opened my mouth to speak, to explain, to apologize, though I wasn't even sure what I would say. But she held up a hand and said, "Don't bother." Instead of making a scene, she walked past me, poured herself a coffee, and sat down at the kitchen island. "I knew something was wrong," she said quietly. "Tyler's been different lately, more alive." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She wasn't yelling or mad. She sounded almost relieved. She looked at me and said, "I don't blame you, but you should know that in this house things always have results." I didn't know what she meant when I left, but the next day I got a call from Richard Montgomery himself. He wanted to talk to me about something, and I was expecting to be fired. Instead, he offered me a new job as the household manager, which was a professional position with better pay, more responsibility, and direct oversight of the property and staff. I was shocked, and Tyler avoided me for days after that. "I didn't mean for things to get complicated," he said quietly. "They already were," I replied. "We didn't talk about that night again, not directly, but something had changed. I wasn't invisible anymore, not in this house, not in my life. I started walking taller, speaking with confidence, and taking pride in more than just the polished floors and clean windows." As the months went by, I got used to my new job and started to manage renovations, events, and new hires. Laya started to trust me with things she had never done before, and Tyler started to respect me differently. We still talked and didn't talk all the time, but our connection changed. One night, as I stood by the big window in the hallway upstairs and looked out at the city lights, Tyler came up to me and said, "I meant what I said. You know you're stronger than you realize."